as with all theories about doing things, compost tea is another example of people for some reason wanting to confuse or make things difficult. And I'm going to show you how to make a good compost tea without any faffing around. It's pretty straightforward and it only requires 3 buckets. These 2 buckets are empty and this one has got some homemade compost in. Now, a compost tea is all about soaking your compost in water to extract all the microorganisms within it and the biology that we want to get out of it. And then we can use that to either apply directly to the roots of our plants or use it as a foliar spray. Now, for me here, there's absolutely no point in me using it as a foliar spray because it's just going to evaporate and it won't do the plants any good at all. So I'm wasting my time. So I want to be using it directly on the base of the plants. It's straight into the roots. Thing about compost tea is it's a slow release nutrient. It's not fast acting. It's not like using a tomato feed, which I do use here as an organic product, and we'll talk about that another time. But the actual method of making a compost tea should be pretty straightforward. I've seen a number of videos where people are saying that you need to use an air pump. You don't. It just makes it complicated. Others are saying that you need to add things to it, to, you know, like fish, to make it more reactive. And again, you don't. Just keep it very, very simple. So like I say, I've got 3 buckets here. Now, one thing that is important to do is you do want to get some air in it. You don't want it to be anaerobic, you want it to be aerobic. But like I say, you don't need these water pumps that you might find in, say, your fish tank. Now, the first thing is we want a bucket of water. Now, we have our own water supply here from our own well, so our water isn't chlorinated. But if you're going to use tap water, fill your bucket and then leave it to stand for 24 hours so that chlorine can evaporate out of the water. So let's just fill this bucket up first. I've got quite a bit of pressure in this pipe, and that's put quite a bit of air into that water. Because my water isn't chlorinated, I don't need to leave this in the sunlight for the chlorine to evaporate over a 24-hour period. So I can use this straight away. But if you are using tap water, then you do need to do that. And also you could use rainwater, which again isn't chlorinated. So there's my water. Here is some of my garden compost, and you can see that there's all sorts of stuff in here, bits and pieces and goodness knows what. It's pretty dry, but I tip that into my bucket, and so to this compost I add my water. Now, here we have our bucket of water and compost. The first thing I'm going to be doing is giving this a stir. So, I don't know why people call it a compost tea. I suppose it's better than saying a compost extract or I don't know. But basically what we're doing is we're steeping the compost in the water. We want to get out all the goodness that's in there. So we give it a stir. Now, like I say, a lot of people say, oh, you need to put an air pump in there to get it to bubble. Yeah, you can do that. And you can also actually put your compost into a paint bag, which will act as a strainer. So it's like a big bag of PG tips, for example. So you're steeping it in the water. But here, I'm not doing that, obviously, as you can see. I don't think you need to do that. Now, I want to get air into that. Well, there's a very easy way of doing it. And you don't need a water pump. And you don't need to set up any special kit. So I'll show you how you do it. You literally put that there. You put this here, and if you want to get air into this mix, you just simply pour it in like that. There's your air. You don't need you don't need an air pump. You just do that. Now, some people don't even bother doing that. They just literally stir it, and that'll work. But who doesn't like tipping containers of water from one into another? As long as you get it in there. And that's all you need to do. And then you leave it for 24 hours. So after 24 hours, I've got a lovely mix of stuff here. Now you can skim it off. I have been skimming some off already. Just drop it into another bucket, and you will have a residue in here from the compost as it settles down. But you're left with this. I'm going to give this a bit of a stir. I do know that I've got residue at the bottom of the bucket, but I want to show you the colour of it. So like I say, I've not used an air pump on this or anything else, but that is, some people call this liquid gold. Wrong colour, but anyway, so this is compost tea. That's all there is to it. It doesn't need to be complicated. You just literally steep your compost in a bucket of water, and 24 hours later you've got a really good, powerful, slow release energy source for your plants. Straight in. You don't even need to dilute it. Now, I could shove my watering can here into the bucket, but if I do that, then the handle's going to get pretty grubby, and I don't want it all over me. So there we go. That is such an easy way of making compost tea without using an air pump that you would find in your fish tank, and no other ingredients, just water and compost. That's all. There's no chemicals, nothing. Now all I've got to do now is go and water this directly onto some of my plants. So all we do is literally just pour that straight into this pot, and that will slowly release all the microorganisms that are in that compost tea back into these plants here. And that's a really great way of feeding your plants. So I've made videos in the past about how to make feeds using weeds. So for example, to the right hand side there, we've had the nettles where in the past I've cut them all back, thrown them into a big bucket or barrel, filled them up with water and popped the lid on. And the thing with that, or weed tea, is that it will ferment. So it's a very similar process to the Jadam methods. Problem with Jadam for me is that they actually do use chemicals to get that fermentation sped up somewhat. So I don't tend to go down that particular line. But the weed teas are another great way of making another form of organic liquid fertilizers for your plants and your veggies. The downside of it is it will take quite a few days to ferment, and when you take the lid off, boy does it stink. This doesn't. It's 24 hours and that's it. One thing I will say is that you want to be using this within the 24 hours, but exactly the same as that yeast solution that we made the other week for the tomatoes. This is the same thing. Once you've made it, use it. You can't keep it, and it loses its benefit. So you use it immediately. And then any waste that you've got, either from skimming off from this or residue left in the bucket, just goes back onto the compost heap and the process starts all over again. So there you go. A very easy way of making compost tea without any faff. See ya.